The Canola School on realagriculture.com is supported by Bear Crop Science. We're joined right now on realagriculture.com by Murray Hartman. Murray is the provincial oilseed specialist with Alberta Agriculture. Well, welcome today, Murray.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.
Murray, today we're going to talk about Clubroot. Been seeing press releases from the Canola Council talking about apparently there's a spread of Clubroot. How significant is this spread outside of the normal geographical area that we were focused on in Edmonton?
Well, there is one county, at least so far, that has reported their first cases of Clubroot out in the east from Vermilion County. So obviously from the standpoint of spreading beyond where we traditionally dealing with it, yes, it's continuing to, go on that course.
Does that surprise you?
Not really. It's given the fact that this year was a really wet year. It was wet to start, and then June was really wet. So the conditions, therefore, were optimal for the disease to, infect canola seedling roots. And there was a lot of canola seeded acres, records acres. So obviously, it's a numbers game. You have more and more fields seed the canola, and likelihood of spores being around, just a better chance of being able to find it. So put those two together, and it's not unusual to find it in more cases this year.
Yeah, so if we look at the area that we're dealing with here that we've been finding Clubroot, how many miles or how many kilometers across is it? How big of an area are we talking about?
Well, if you go from west of Edmonton all the way to Vermilion River, that's probably 300 kilometers. But still, the majority of the new cases, so like 90% of the cases, are probably within like 100 kilometers of Edmonton. So it's still that hot spot, area around Edmonton where we find most of the new cases. But given the fact that, we first found our cases on canola around Edmonton in 2003, and now it's kind of endemic in, quite a few of the counties there. So these counties that are finding it now, you give them 5-6 more years, and with right weather conditions and tight canola rotation stuff, they'll probably be in a similar situation.
I'm sure this topic's coming up a lot in different coffee shops. Should producers be how concerned should producers be? Is Clubroot the big one?
Well, Clubroot's a pretty serious disease when you get it, but now that we do have resistant varieties, there's a way of at least coping with that disease. It's not a silver bullet, not gonna make the disease go away in the soil, etc. So from that standpoint, we can manage it, and it's probably like prairie wild is probably not as significant threat as blackleg or even sclerotinia is. So it still is rather localized disease.
So how do I know if I have Clubroot? Basically just no yield, or do the plants, what do I have to do, pull plants, or how do I identify whether I have it or not?
Yeah, well, when it gets to the point where you have a pretty bad infestation, you have patches that aren't yielding very well, it becomes pretty obvious, and we've been through this in other kind of situations, for example, with herbicide-resistant weeds. Some of the cases we found that it takes almost a third of the field before a guy really recognizes, if he's not really carefully scouting, that there's a problem. So with some people, they may need these big patches to alert them. Other people who are actively scouting can find it at the very beginning, of infestation. And they would do that by actually pulling plants. So if you have plants that aren't looking healthy, they ripen early and they're not much yield there, you might assume, well, this could be sclerotinia or blackleg, or just flooded out because these low areas didn't do very well this year. Well, that's making an assumption, and you should rather get out and pull the plants and check for the swellings on the roots. And actually, by this time of the year, if Clubroot had galls early in the season, they've already kind of started to degrade, and so instead of being a nice white gall on the root, you might pull up a root and it's kind of look brownish peat mossy on it and think, oh, that's root rot or something. But no, that's the gall has already degraded. So, and then if you realize that, well, maybe I better make sure, and you could dig up some plants more carefully with a little shovel, and then you'll see that gall, it might be peat mossy, but it's at least retaining a shape of a gall. And then last step would be send a sample into a lab and get a genetic test to confirm it.
So basically, because there's no root structure, would increased lodging be a way to identify maybe a trouble spot?
On a very bad patch, yes, but you can have increased lodging from blackleg also because of cankers, right? So that's why it's very important when you see something, say, well, what is it? Now, if it's blackleg and you say, well, I planted a resistant variety, why do I have that? Well, obviously then, the strains or pathotypes that are in your field are not matching up with the resistant varieties you're growing. So it's really important to go and figure out what is in your field and then try to make your strategies to deal with it.